The unnecessary and coercive separation of a child from their parents is a form of child maltreatment that can cause catastrophic physical and mental health consequences. Children who are traumatically separated from a parent often develop severe psychological distress and emotional pain. Many children will go on to develop mental health disorders, such as acute stress disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, or a major depressive disorder. The youngest children will be at high risk for reactive attachment disorder, which can cause a permanent emotional disturbance. The policy of separating children from their parents goes against everything that I believe. Frederick Douglass once noted, "It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." Building strong children will not occur if our country continues ripping over 2,000 children from their mothers.
Amen.
Mothers
Amen.
who are seeking a better life for their
Amen.
children. And over 100 of those children are less than 4 years of age.
Amen.
We cannot build strong children if our country refuses to even touch or hold these children who are deprived, who are in need of physical contact and are crying and in need. We can't hold or touch them. Rally, vote, fight for our children. We are better than this.
It can happen if everybody's fighting. It can happen
petitions, but please remember there's a resource here for those who are affected by these different policies.
And thanks to all of you. Is there anyone else? Come on up.
If we want to use the Bible as guide for American government, as our administration seems to do, then we need to be more specific. This is easy enough in the case of immigration, because the issue of migration, the movement of peoples, and care for those away from their homes is one of the most consistently treated topics in the Bible. From the stories of the patriarchs to the biblical prophets and Jesus himself, the Bible is insistent that foreigners, strangers, and travelers deserve hospitality and care. It seems especially strange to suggest that separating families is somehow biblical. Hospitality was a critical building block of ancient society. Every ancient Mediterranean society, including the Romans, about whom Paul was actually writing, believed that people have a moral obligation towards visitors and guests. It was fundamental to how the world worked. Perhaps the biggest problem here is that the power dynamic is off. When Paul and Jesus say, obey laws, or render to Caesar what is Caesar's, they are advising the disenfranchised and powerless about how to interact with an immoral government with which you sincerely and morally disagree. It is advice for the vulnerable, not the powerful. When the government cites these passages in this way, they are aligning themselves with the Romans, not the Christians. This is not who we are. If the extent of your morality is based on whether or not something is illegal, then you'll find excuses to accept some truly horrific evil things. Slavery, the Holocaust, segregation, apartheid. We are 7.5 billion primates stuck on one giant rock, rotating in a solar system. Our borders are arbitrary. We are all one species. Our differences are completely superficial. Either you're a compassionate, decent, fair-minded person, or you're not. You don't get to put up arbitrary border walls around which people you see as human beings. And if you're trying to come up with justification or rationalization for putting children in cages, you're probably a person who would say, well, we can't let slaves escape. It's against the law. In the words of a great leader, when I despair, I remember that all through history, the ways of truth and love have always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time, they can seem invincible. But in the end, they always fell. Think of it always, Mahatma Gandhi. So to be sure truth and love wins, rise up, continue to show up, and show you care. Today, we rally and march, and in November, we vote.
I was born here in Lewisburg many years ago, far too many years ago.
We're told in the Bible that when we serve the least of those among us, we are serving God himself. May we be granted eyes to see and ears to hear the presence of God and the cries of those broken by this toxic political policy. And may we have the courage to raise our voices, lift our hands, and move our feet in service to those whom bear God's image to us today. God bless and keep you all. Thank you.
You know, this flyer has great information, but I think the most important thing on it, from my perspective, is this name Tom Marino on it. Next year, I don't want to see this name Tom Marino here. We know exactly what he stands for. We know he supported the president's actions and somehow illogically also supported the executive action. We know that he will do as he's told. And rallies are great, and petitions are great, and phone calls are great. But I'm sorry, at the end of the day, we need to get Republicans out of Congress. We need accountability. And I certainly agree with everything that the speakers here said today, and this immigration issue is one that I care about for some of the obvious reasons, and also because I teach at Penn State. We have so many foreign students who come to our university, contribute. They stay in the States or they go back to their home country and they contribute there. And after the election in November 2016, I had a number of students, one in particular sticks out in my mind, who came to me after class crying because she was afraid first that she was going to be bullied and that she was going to be the victim of perhaps some violence, or that maybe she wouldn't be able to come back to Penn State. And that absolutely broke my heart, and luckily she's doing well now, but there is a serious concern on her part, and I think it's justified that this is not about policy, this is about hatred. And yesterday I had an immigration town hall. I was lucky to have the former Representative and Vice Admiral Joe Sestak come to State College and talk about immigration. And we had a great crowd, and we had some great questions from the audience. And the final question from the audience was from a young man, probably 8 or 9 years old. And his question was simply, what do you think about the idea that all Muslims are terrorists? And it just kind of threw me back. It was not the kind of question that I was expecting somebody his age to be asking. And of course, I gave him the answer that, it's a peaceful and loving religion. But I have kids who are 3 and 4. This young man is 8 and 9. They're growing up in an environment where that is maybe how the political rhetoric is discussed, or that's how we talk about other people. And I refuse to allow that to happen. This is a make or break moment for our country. I'm happy to be out here doing my part. I'm so thankful that you guys are here too. Let's keep it going until November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And if there's anyone else who would like to say a few words, you're more than welcome to do that.
When an alien resides with you in your land, you shall not oppress the alien. The alien who resides with you shall be to you as a citizen among you. I am the Lord your God. That's from the book of Leviticus. In Matthew, Jesus tells the parable to his followers, emphasizing specific classes of people that we should serve as if serving Christ himself. Immigrants is one of those groups. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me, he says. In fact, the character call for immigrants is reiterated over and over again throughout the Bible. But something that Mark just said is very important. This is not policy, this is hatred. And so I want to read, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want to read just parts of it. The United States has a history of separating brown and black children from their parents. During the era of slavery, enslaved families were frequently torn apart, bought and sold by different slave owners, and most of those families were never able to reunite. In the late 19th century, the United States government began to tear Native children from their families to forcibly assimilate them into white American culture in immigrant boarding schools. The practice of separating families is only the latest in a long pattern of treating brown and black people as inferior and unworthy of human dignity, and that's a pattern that we as a church must condemn. The Trump administration claims to have no choice but to separate children from their criminal parents, even though there is absolutely nothing in the criminal code that requires either incarceration for a misdemeanor offense or separation of children from their parents. This cruel policy is being implemented even against immigrants who present themselves at official boarding crosses and legally request asylum. The government has made it clear that it seeks to collectively punish children and parents in order to deter them from seeking asylum and refuge in the U.S. This must not be allowed to stand without a full-throated protest from every corner of the church and from every corner of Lewisburg and Union County and Pennsylvania and the country.
We were reminded that in order to continue this fight, we need to stay well ourselves.